The stagecoach rattled to a halt in front of the dusty general store, and Emma Dawson stepped down onto the main street of Fort Bowie, Arizona Territory, wondering if she had made the biggest mistake of her life. It was May of 1881, and the afternoon sun beat down mercilessly on her dark traveling dress as she clutched her worn carpetbag and looked around at the rough settlement that was supposed to be her new home. The town consisted of little more than a handful of wooden buildings, a saloon from which piano music drifted, and mountains rising in the distance like ancient sentinels. She had traveled all the way from Philadelphia, answering an advertisement placed by a rancher named Jonathan Garrett, who claimed he needed a wife to help him build a life in the Arizona Territory. Emma was 22 years old, plain by most standards, with mousy brown hair pulled back in a severe bun and gray eyes that had learned not to hope for much. She had spent her entire life being passed from one relative to another after her parents died when she was 7, always the unwanted burden, always the extra mouth to feed. Her aunt in Philadelphia had made it abundantly clear that Emma had overstayed her welcome, and when the advertisement for mail-order brides appeared in the newspaper, it seemed like the only escape from a life of servitude and loneliness. Jonathan Garrett's letter had been simple and straightforward. He owned a cattle ranch outside Fort Bowie, worked hard, and wanted a sensible woman who understood that frontier life was difficult. He made no promises of romance or affection, only honesty and a roof over her head. As Emma stood on the boardwalk, trying to get her bearings, a tall figure emerged from the general store. The man who approached her was in his late 20s, with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair that curled slightly at the collar of his worn work shirt. His eyes were a striking blue, standing out against his tanned face, and he moved with the easy confidence of someone comfortable in his own body. He stopped a few feet away, removing his hat to reveal those intense eyes studying her carefully. "Miss Dawson." His voice was deep and warm with a hint of Texas in the drawl. "Yes, Mr. Garrett, call me Jonathan, or just Jack, most folks do." He extended his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Emma placed hers in it. His palm was calloused and strong, the hand of a man who worked with them every day. "Welcome to Fort Bowie. I hope the journey was not too difficult." "It was long," Emma admitted, suddenly feeling every mile of the trip in her aching bones. "But I am here now." "That you are." Jack studied her for a moment longer, and Emma felt a flush creep up her neck. She knew she was not what most men hoped for in a bride. She was too thin, too plain, too quiet, but Jack's expression revealed nothing as he picked up her bag. "My wagon is just down the street. The ranch is about 5 miles out. We should get going before it gets too late." They walked in silence to where a sturdy wagon waited, hitched to 2 patient horses. Jack helped her up onto the wooden seat, his hands strong and steady at her waist, before climbing up beside her. As they left the small settlement behind, heading into the open country, Emma felt the weight of her decision settling on her shoulders. She was truly alone now, miles from anything familiar, bound to marry a stranger in a land that seemed as harsh as it was beautiful. "The ranch has been in operation for 3 years, Jack said after they had been traveling for a while. "I came out here from Texas after the war, wanted to make something of my own, build something that mattered. I have about 300 head of cattle, a decent house, a barn, and some outbuildings. My foreman, Miguel, lives in the bunkhouse with 2 other hands. They are good men, respectful. You would not have to worry about them." "I see." Emma did not know what else to say. She watched the landscape roll by, the scrub brush and cacti, the mountains rising in shades of purple and gold as the sun began its descent. It was so different from the crowded streets of Philadelphia, from the narrow row house, where she had spent the last few years. "I want to be honest with you, Emma. May I call you Emma?" "Of course. I did not bring you out here under false pretenses. I need help running the ranch. I need someone to manage the house, to cook and clean and perhaps help with the books. In return, I will provide for you, protect you, and treat you with respect. I know this is not a traditional courtship, but I hope we can build something good here. Something solid." Emma turned to look at him, taking in the strong profile, the determined set of his jaw. "I appreciate your honesty, Mr. Garrett. Jack, I should be honest with you as well. I have no illusions about this arrangement. I am here because I had nowhere else to go. I will work hard and do my best to be a good wife, but I cannot promise more than that." Something flickered in Jack's eyes, an emotion Emma could not quite name. "That is all I ask." They fell silent again, but it was not uncomfortable. Emma found herself studying the man beside her from the corner of her eye. He was handsome in a rugged way, with strong features and capable hands that held the reins with easy competence. She wondered what had made him place that advertisement, why a man like him needed to send away for a bride instead of courting one of the local women. As if reading her thoughts, Jack spoke again. "I suppose you are wondering why I advertised for a wife instead of finding one here." The thought had crossed my mind. The truth is, there are not many unmarried women in Fort Bowie, and the ones that are here have their pick of men. I am not much for socializing or pretty words. I spend most of my time working the ranch, and when I do go into town, I do not know what to say to women. It seemed simpler this way, more practical. "I understand practicality," Emma said softly. "It has governed most of my life." Jack glanced at her, and for a moment their eyes met. Emma felt a strange flutter in her chest, something she had never experienced before. She looked away quickly, focusing on the horizon where the sun was painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The ranch came into view as they crested a small rise. It was larger than Emma had expected, with a 2-story wooden house that looked sturdy and well-maintained. The barn was substantial, and she could see cattle grazing in distant pastures. There was even a small garden plot near the house, though it looked somewhat neglected. "It is not much," Jack said, a note of pride creeping into his voice despite the modest words. "But it is mine. Ours, I suppose, once we are married." "It is more than I have ever had," Emma said truthfully. "It is beautiful." Jack looked at her with surprise, as if he had not expected her to say that. "Most women from back east think it is too rough out here." "Perhaps I am not most women." A slow smile spread across Jack's face, transforming his serious expression into something warmer. "Perhaps not." They pulled up in front of the house, and Jack helped Emma down from the wagon. A Mexican man in his 40s emerged from the barn, wiping his hands on his trousers. He had a kind face, weathered by years in the sun, and when he smiled, it reached his eyes. "Miguel, this is Miss Emma Dawson. Emma, this is Miguel Torres, my foreman and friend." "Welcome, Miss Dawson," Miguel said with a slight bow. "It is good to have a lady at the ranch. The place needs a woman's touch." "Thank you," Emma said, returning his smile. "I hope I can help make it feel more like a home." "I had the boys clean up the house as best we could," Miguel said to Jack. "Fresh linens on the beds swept out the dust, but I am sure Miss Dawson will find things that need a woman's attention." "I appreciate the effort," Jack said, clapping Miguel on the shoulder. "Can you take care of the horses? I want to show Emma around before it gets dark." "Of course, boss." Miguel tipped his hat to Emma and led the wagon toward the barn. Jack picked up Emma's bag and gestured toward the house. "Come on. Let me show you what is going to be your home." The inside of the house was sparse but clean, as Miguel had promised. The main room served as both kitchen and living area, with a large stone fireplace dominating one wall. A wooden table with 4 chairs sat near the kitchen area, and a few simple pieces of furniture were arranged around the fireplace. The floors were bare wood, scrubbed clean, and the windows let in the fading sunlight. "Upstairs there are 2 bedrooms," Jack said, his voice becoming slightly awkward. "I have been sleeping in the larger one, but I can move to the smaller room, or we can share the main bedroom, whatever you prefer. I will not force anything on you, Emma. We will move at your pace." Emma felt her cheeks burning. She had known, of course, that marriage would involve certain duties, but she had not let herself think too much about them. "Perhaps separate rooms at first, until we know each other better." Relief and something else, perhaps disappointment, crossed Jack's face. "Of course. That is sensible. I will move my things to the smaller room tonight." He led her upstairs, showing her the main bedroom with its large bed covered in a simple quilt, a wardrobe, a dresser with a mirror, and a small window that looked out over the ranch. It was more space than Emma had ever had to herself, and she felt tears prick at her eyes. "Is something wrong?" Jack asked, concern evident in his voice. "No, this is more than I expected, more than I have ever had." Jack set down her bag and turned to face her fully. "Emma, I know this situation is not ideal. I know you did not come out here because you wanted to, but because you felt you had no choice. But I want you to know that I will do everything in my power to make sure you are safe and cared for here. I may not be the most eloquent man, and I may not know how to court you properly, but I will work hard to be a good husband." Emma looked up at him, seeing the sincerity in those blue eyes. "Why did you choose me? From the letters you must have received, why mine?" Jack was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "Your letter was honest. You did not try to make yourself sound like something you were not. You did not make promises about love or devotion. You were practical and straightforward. It seemed to me that we might understand each other." "I see. I hope I did not disappoint you. I know I am not much to look at." Emma almost laughed at that, because Jack Garrett was probably one of the most attractive men she had ever seen. But she understood what he meant. He was not polished or refined like the gentleman back east. He was rough around the edges, weathered by hard work and the elements. "You have not disappointed me," she said softly. "I think perhaps we are both trying to find our way." Jack nodded, and for a moment they stood there in the fading light, 2 strangers bound by an agreement, trying to find solid ground. "I will let you freshen up and rest," Jack said finally. "Tomorrow we can go into town and see the preacher make this official, unless you want to wait." "No, tomorrow is fine. There is no point in delaying." Jack nodded again and left, closing the door softly behind him. Emma sank down onto the bed, suddenly exhausted. She looked around the room that would be hers, at least for now, and tried to imagine a future here. It was difficult. She had spent so long just trying to survive day to day that thinking about an actual future seemed almost impossible. She unpacked her meager belongings, hanging her 2 other dresses in the wardrobe and placing her few personal items on the dresser. A worn copy of Jane Eyre that had belonged to her mother, a small music box that no longer played, a photograph of her parents taken before she was born. These were all she had of her old life, and they looked small and insignificant in this new space. Emma washed her face and hands in the basin on the dresser, changed into her nightgown, and climbed into bed. Through the open window, she could hear the sounds of the ranch settling down for the night. Cattle lowing in the distance, horses moving in the barn, the low murmur of men's voices. It was so different from the sounds of the city, the rattling carriages and shouting vendors. Here, under the vast expanse of stars visible through her window, Emma felt both terribly alone and strangely at peace. She did not know how long she had been lying there, unable to sleep despite her exhaustion, when she heard Jack's footsteps on the stairs. He moved quietly, as if trying not to disturb her, and she heard the door to the other bedroom open and close. Emma wondered if he was lying awake too, wondering what he had gotten himself into by bringing her here. Sleep finally came as the moon rose over the mountains, and Emma dreamed of a life she could not quite imagine but desperately wanted to believe in. The next morning, Emma woke to the sound of roosters crowing and sunlight streaming through the window. For a moment she was disoriented, forgetting where she was. Then it all came rushing back. Arizona, the ranch, Jack. Today they would be married. She dressed carefully in her best dress, a simple blue cotton that was starting to show wear but was still respectable. She pinned up her hair, studying her reflection in the mirror. She looked tired and there were shadows under her eyes, but there was also something else. A spark of something that might have been hope. Downstairs, she found Jack already in the kitchen, attempting to make coffee. He looked up when she entered and his eyes widened slightly. "You look nice," he said, sounding almost surprised. "Thank you, so do you." It was true. Jack had clearly made an effort, wearing clean trousers and a pressed shirt, his hair combed back neatly. He still wore his work boots, but they had been cleaned and polished. "I was trying to make breakfast," Jack admitted, gesturing at the stove where something was burning. "But I am not much of a cook." Emma moved forward, taking over with practiced ease. "Let me help. What do you have?" Together they managed to produce a simple meal of eggs, bacon, and biscuits. They ate in companionable silence, the morning sun warming the kitchen. Emma noticed that Jack kept glancing at her, as if trying to memorize her features. "Are you ready?" he asked when they had finished. "As ready as I will ever be." The ride into Fort Bowie was quicker than it had seemed the day before. Jack drove with confidence, and Emma found herself relaxing slightly in his presence. He pointed out various landmarks, telling her about the history of the area, the Apache conflicts that had given the fort its importance, the cattle drives that passed through. "It can be dangerous out here," Jack said seriously. "I want you to learn how to shoot, how to protect yourself if you need to. I hope you will never have to use those skills, but it is better to be prepared." "I would like that," Emma said, surprising herself. "I would like to feel capable." Jack glanced at her with approval. "We will start as soon as you are settled in." The preacher in Fort Bowie was a thin, earnest man named Reverend Matthews, who had come west to bring religion to the frontier. He did not ask many questions when Jack explained that they wanted to be married, though his eyes were kind when he looked at Emma. "You enter into this marriage of your own free will?" he asked her gently. "I do. And you, Jonathan?" "Yes, sir." The ceremony was brief and simple. Miguel had come with them to serve as witness, along with Mrs. Henderson, who ran the general store. When Reverend Matthews pronounced them husband and wife, Jack hesitated for just a moment before leaning down to press a chaste kiss to Emma's lips. It was the first time anyone had ever kissed her, and Emma felt her heart racing as they pulled apart. "Congratulations," Reverend Matthews said warmly. "May God bless your union." They signed the marriage certificate, and just like that, Emma Dawson became Emma Garrett. She stared at her new name on the paper, trying to make it feel real. Jack took her to lunch at the small restaurant in town, where they ate steak and potatoes while townspeople cast curious glances their way. Emma knew they must be wondering about the new bride, making their own judgments about why Jack Garrett had to send away for a wife. "Do not pay them any mind," Jack said quietly, noticing her discomfort. "They will find something else to talk about soon enough." After lunch, Jack took her to the general store, insisting that she pick out whatever she needed. Emma, unused to such consideration, tried to select only the bare essentials, but Jack encouraged her to get more. "You are my wife now," he said firmly. "You deserve nice things." Emma found herself selecting fabric for new dresses, a new pair of shoes that actually fit properly, some ribbons for her hair and supplies for the kitchen. Mrs. Henderson, a plump woman in her 50s with kind eyes, helped her pick out items and gave her advice about life in Fort Bowie. "Jonathan is a good man," she said quietly when Jack was across the store selecting ammunition. "Keeps to himself mostly, but he is always fair in his dealings. You could have done worse." "I know," Emma said, and she meant it. Whatever else might happen, she believed that Jack would keep his promises to her. They loaded the supplies into the wagon and headed back to the ranch as the afternoon sun beat down. Emma felt strange, wearing a simple gold band on her finger that Jack had produced from his pocket during the ceremony. She was a married woman now, bound to this man for better or worse. When they arrived back at the ranch, Miguel greeted them with congratulations and announced that he and the other hands had prepared a special dinner in honor of the occasion. Emma was touched by the gesture, and the evening meal of beef, beans, and fresh bread was surprisingly festive. The ranch hands, Tom and Bobby, were young men in their early 20s who treated Emma with awkward respect. They ate outside at a large table, and as the sun set, someone produced a fiddle and they had music. Jack asked Emma to dance, and she had to admit she did not know how. He taught her the simple steps, his hand warm at her waist, his patience endless as she stumbled through the movements. By the end of the evening, Emma was laughing, actually laughing, for what felt like the first time in years. When the celebration ended and they went back into the house, the reality of their situation settled over them again. They stood awkwardly in the kitchen, neither quite sure what to do next. "Today was nice," Emma said finally. "Thank you for making it special." "You deserve special," Jack said quietly. "Emma, I meant what I said yesterday. I will not pressure you for anything you are not ready to give. We can take our time getting to know each other." Emma looked at this man who was now her husband, seeing the sincerity in his eyes. "Have you ever been in love, Jack?" The question seemed to surprise him. "No, I have cared for women, but love? No, I do not think so, neither have I. I have never even been courted. No one ever wanted me." Jack stepped closer, his eyes intense. Then they were fools. "I do not know how to be a wife. Not really. I can cook and clean and manage a household, but the other things, the feelings and closeness that people are supposed to have, I do not know if I am capable of that." Jack reached out and gently touched her cheek, and Emma found herself leaning into the touch without thinking. "I think maybe we can figure it out together, if you are willing to try." "I am," Emma whispered. "I think I would like to try." Jack smiled then, a genuine, warm smile that transformed his face. "Then that is enough for now. Good night, Emma." "Good night, Jack." They retreated to their separate rooms, but Emma lay awake for a long time, her hand touching her cheek where Jack's fingers had been. Something was stirring inside her, something she did not have a name for yet. The days that followed settled into a rhythm. Emma threw herself into running the household, discovering that she had a talent for organization and management. She cleaned the house from top to bottom, planted vegetables in the neglected garden, and began preparing 3 meals a day for the men. Jack had been right that the place needed a woman's touch, and Emma found satisfaction in transforming the bare house into something that felt more like a home. She sewed curtains for the windows, using some of the fabric they had bought in town, and she moved furniture around to create more welcoming spaces. Jack watched her work with quiet approval, often helping when he came in from the ranch work. They fell into an easy partnership, discussing the daily needs of the ranch over dinner, making plans for improvements. True to his word, Jack taught Emma to shoot. They spent an hour every evening after dinner, with Jack patiently showing her how to hold the rifle, how to aim, how to compensate for wind and distance. Emma proved to be a quick learner, and she felt a sense of pride when she finally hit her target consistently. "You are a natural," Jack said with approval after she hit the center of the target 3 times in a row. "I feel better knowing you can protect yourself if needed." "Thank you for teaching me," Emma said, lowering the rifle, "for treating me like I am capable." "You are capable, Emma. More than you seem to realize." They were standing close together, and Emma found herself very aware of Jack's presence, the warmth of his body, the way he looked at her with something in his eyes that made her heart beat faster. Over the past 2 weeks since their marriage, something had been growing between them. It was in the way Jack's hand would linger on hers when he passed her something at dinner. In the way Emma found herself watching him work from the kitchen window, in the comfortable silences that felt warm rather than awkward. One evening, about 3 weeks after their wedding, Emma was washing dishes when Jack came up behind her. She felt his presence before he touched her, and when his hands gently settled on her waist, she leaned back against him instinctively. "Emma," he said softly, his breath warm against her ear. "I need to tell you something." "What is it?" I thought this would be practical, a business arrangement, but somewhere along the way it stopped feeling like that. He turned her gently to face him, his blue eyes searching hers. "I find myself thinking about you constantly. When I am out working, I am looking forward to coming back to the house, to seeing you, to talking with you. You have become more than just my wife in name." Emma's heart was pounding so hard she was sure Jack could hear it. "I feel the same way," she admitted. "I did not expect to, but I do." "Jack, I have never felt like this before. I do not even know what to call it." "I think it might be love," Jack said, cupping her face with both hands. "I think I am falling in love with you, Emma." "I do not know if I have ever been loved," Emma whispered, tears filling her eyes. "I do not know if I know how to recognize it." Jack leaned his forehead against hers. "Then let me be your first and last. Let me show you what it means to be loved, and you can teach me too, because I am new to this as well." "Yes," Emma breathed. "Yes, I want that." When Jack kissed her this time, it was nothing like the brief kiss at their wedding. This kiss was deep and passionate, full of all the feelings that had been building between them. Emma wrapped her arms around his neck, pressing closer, discovering a hunger in herself she had not known existed. They broke apart, both breathing hard, and Jack rested his forehead against hers again. "I want to move back into our bedroom," he said quietly. "I want to be your husband in every way if you will have me." "I want that too," Emma said, surprising herself with her certainty. "I am nervous, but I trust you." "I will be gentle," Jack promised. "We will go slow." That night, Emma waited in the main bedroom, her heart racing with a mixture of nervousness and anticipation. When Jack entered, carrying his belongings from the other room, she stood by the window in her nightgown, the moonlight casting silver shadows across the room. Jack set down his things and came to her, taking her hands in his. "We do not have to do anything tonight. We can just sleep beside each other, get used to sharing space." But Emma found that she did not want to wait. She had waited her whole life to feel wanted, to feel cherished, and now that it was within her grasp, she wanted to claim it fully. "I want to be with you," she said simply. "Show me how to love you." What followed was tender and sweet, with Jack taking his time, showing Emma pleasure she had never imagined, making her feel cherished and beautiful. Afterward, they lay tangled together, and Emma traced patterns on Jack's chest as he played with her hair. "I never imagined it could be like this," Emma said softly. "I always thought marriage was about duty and obligation." "It is about that too," Jack said. "But it is also about this, about finding someone who makes you want to be better, who makes coming home the best part of your day." "You make me believe I am worth something," Emma admitted. "For the first time in my life, I feel like I matter to someone." Jack tightened his arms around her. You matter to me more than anything. Emma, I know I am not good with words, but I need you to understand something. You saved me too. I was so lonely out here, just going through the motions day after day. You brought life back to this place, back to me. Emma tilted her face up to kiss him, pouring all her newfound feelings into it. They made love again, slower this time, learning each other's bodies, discovering what brought pleasure. The next morning, Emma woke wrapped in Jack's arms, and for the first time in her life, she felt completely at peace. She watched him sleep in the early morning light, memorizing the planes of his face, the way his dark hair fell across his forehead. When he woke and saw her watching him, he smiled. "Good morning, wife. Good morning, husband." They stayed in bed longer than they should have, talking and kissing and simply enjoying being together. Finally, responsibilities called, and they dressed and went downstairs to start the day. Miguel noticed the change immediately, though he was too polite to say anything. But Emma caught him exchanging a knowing look with Tom, and she felt her cheeks flush. Let them notice, she thought. Let the whole world know that she was loved. The summer passed in a haze of happiness. Emma had never known life could be so full. She worked hard during the days, managing the household, tending her growing garden and learning more about ranch management. Jack included her in decisions, valuing her input, and Emma found she had a good head for numbers and organization. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch and watch the sunset, Jack's arm around her shoulders, talking about their plans for the future. Jack wanted to expand the herd, maybe build a bigger barn. Emma wanted to add chickens and perhaps a milk cow. They dreamed together, building a life from words and hopes. Their physical relationship deepened and grew, becoming more natural and passionate. Emma discovered she had a sensual side she had never known about, and Jack delighted in drawing it out of her. They explored each other with curiosity and tenderness, learning to read each other's desires. One evening in early September, Emma realized that her monthly courses were late. She said nothing at first, not wanting to raise hopes prematurely, but when another week passed and she felt nauseated in the mornings, she knew. She waited until they were alone in their bedroom to tell Jack. He was undressing for bed, and Emma sat on the edge of the mattress, her hands clasped in her lap. "Jack, I need to tell you something." He heard the serious tone in her voice and came to sit beside her, taking her hand. "What is it? Are you all right?" "I am more than all right. I think I am with child." Jack's eyes widened, and for a moment he seemed unable to speak. Then a smile spread across his face, so bright and joyful that it took Emma's breath away. "Truly? You are sure?" "As sure as I can be. I will need to see the doctor to confirm, but all the signs are there." Jack pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "Emma, this is wonderful, better than wonderful. We are going to have a baby." Emma felt tears streaming down her face, but they were happy tears. "Are you pleased? I know we have only been married a few months." "Pleased? I am overjoyed." Jack pulled back to cup her face, his own eyes suspiciously bright. "You have given me so much already, Emma. A home, love, purpose. And now a child. I do not have words for how happy you have made me." "I love you," Emma said, the words coming easily now. "I love you so much, Jack." "I love you too. So much it scares me sometimes. I keep thinking I am going to wake up and this will all be a dream." They held each other for a long time, talking about the future, about what kind of parents they wanted to be, about names and nurseries, and all the small details that suddenly seemed vitally important. The next day they went into Fort Bowie to see Dr. Harrison, who confirmed what Emma already knew. She was indeed expecting, and if all went well, the baby would arrive in late April or early May. The months of Emma's pregnancy were happy ones. Jack became even more attentive, if that was possible, constantly checking on her, making sure she did not overexert herself. Emma found it both sweet and slightly exasperating. "I am pregnant, not ill," she told him one day when he tried to stop her from hanging laundry. "I know, but I want to take care of you. You do take care of me, every day. But I also need to feel useful, Jack. Please do not treat me like I am fragile." Jack backed off after that, though Emma often caught him watching her with concern. As her belly grew, she had to adjust her dresses, letting out seams and adding panels. She felt ungainly and large, but Jack told her every day that she was beautiful. Winter came to the Arizona Territory, bringing cooler temperatures and occasional rain. Emma and Jack spent the evenings by the fire, Emma sewing baby clothes while Jack worked on carving a cradle. They talked about everything and nothing, comfortable in each other's presence. One evening in February, as they sat together, Emma's hand on her swollen belly, Jack spoke quietly. "I have been thinking about something." "What is that?" "When I sent that advertisement for a bride, I never imagined finding what we have. I thought I would get a practical arrangement, someone to help run the household. Instead, I found my soulmate." Emma felt tears prick at her eyes, as they often did these days. "I feel the same way. When I answered your advertisement, I was running away from a life of loneliness. I never thought I would find a home, real love. You gave me everything I never knew I wanted." Jack reached over and took her hand. "Promise me something, anything. Promise me we will always talk to each other like this, that we will never let the everyday struggles of life make us forget how lucky we are to have found each other." "I promise," Emma said solemnly. "I promise I will love you every day for the rest of my life. And I promise to love you, to cherish you, and to spend every day trying to be worthy of the gift you have given me." They sealed the promise with a kiss, and Emma felt her baby kick as if in approval. As Emma's due date approached, Jack became increasingly anxious. He arranged for Mrs. Henderson to come stay at the ranch when Emma's time came, and he made sure Dr. Harrison knew to be ready at a moment's notice. "You are going to worry yourself sick," Emma told him one evening in late April as he checked for the third time that they had enough clean linens prepared. "I cannot help it. I have never done this before. What if something goes wrong?" Emma went to him, taking his hands. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time. I will be fine, and so will our child." But privately, Emma was nervous too. She had heard stories of women who died in childbirth, of babies who did not survive. She tried not to think about it, focusing instead on preparing the nursery they had set up in a corner of their bedroom, on washing and folding the tiny clothes she had sewn. Her labor began on a warm night in early May, almost exactly a year after she had first arrived in Fort Bowie. The pain started slowly, and Emma labored through the night with Jack by her side, holding her hand, wiping her brow, whispering encouragement. Mrs. Henderson arrived at first light, taking charge with the calm efficiency of a woman who had helped bring many babies into the world. Dr. Harrison came soon after, and as the day wore on and Emma's labor intensified, she drew strength from Jack's presence. "You are doing so well," he murmured, his hand never leaving hers. "You are so strong, Emma. I am in awe of you." Finally, as the sun began to set on another day, Emma gave birth to a healthy baby boy. The first cry filled the room, and Emma collapsed back against the pillows, exhausted but triumphant. "You have a son," Dr. Harrison announced, cleaning the baby and wrapping him in a blanket before placing him in Emma's arms. Emma looked down at the tiny face, at the dark hair and the eyes that would probably turn blue like his father's, and felt love so overwhelming it took her breath away. Jack leaned over them both, his hand gentle on the baby's head, tears streaming freely down his face. "He is perfect," Jack whispered. "You are perfect. Emma, thank you. Thank you for this gift." "What should we name him?" Emma asked, unable to take her eyes off her son. "I was thinking James, after your father. James Garrett." Emma looked up at Jack with surprise. She had told him about her parents during one of their long evening talks, about how much she missed them. The fact that he remembered that he wanted to honor her father made her love him even more. "James is perfect." They spent the next hour just marveling at their son, counting his tiny fingers and toes, watching him nurse for the first time, adjusting to this new reality where they were no longer just husband and wife but mother and father. When Mrs. Henderson finally shooed Jack out so Emma could rest, he kissed her forehead tenderly. "I love you, Emma Garrett, more than I ever thought possible. I love you too. Thank you for loving me, for being my first and my last." The months that followed were exhausting and wonderful. Emma had never known she could be so tired or so happy. James was a good baby, though he had his fussy moments, and Emma loved every minute of being his mother. Jack was a devoted father, coming in from the ranch at every opportunity to hold his son, singing to him in a surprisingly good voice, walking the floor with him at night when he would not settle. They worked as a team, supporting each other through the sleepless nights and the challenges of new parenthood. Emma watched Jack with their son and fell even more deeply in love with her husband. He was patient and gentle, never complaining about disrupted sleep or the constant demands of an infant. One evening, when James was about 3 months old, Emma put him down for the night and joined Jack on the porch. The summer heat had broken, and the evening was pleasant. Jack pulled her down to sit beside him, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. "This has been the best year of my life," he said quietly. "I keep thinking about that day you stepped off the stagecoach, looking so uncertain and brave. I could never have imagined how much you would come to mean to me." "I was terrified," Emma admitted. "I was coming to marry a complete stranger, moving to a place I had never been, but it was the best decision I ever made. I thought I just needed a wife, someone to help with the ranch. Instead, I found a partner, a lover, a best friend. You have made this house a home, Emma. You have made my life have meaning beyond just work and survival." Emma leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling completely content. "Do you remember that first night when I asked if you had ever been in love?" "I do." "And you told me you would be my first and last. You kept that promise, Jack. You showed me what love is, what it feels like to be cherished and valued. You gave me a family when I thought I would always be alone." Jack turned to kiss her, slow and sweet. "You gave me the same gifts. I was alone too, Emma. I just did not realize how lonely I was until you filled my life with love and laughter." They sat together as the stars came out, talking about their plans for the future. Jack wanted to expand the ranch even more, maybe hire additional hands. Emma wanted to start a small business selling her preserves and baked goods in town. They dreamed of more children, of watching James grow, of building a legacy together. As the years passed, those dreams became reality. 2 years after James was born, Emma gave birth to a daughter they named Sarah. Then came another son, Michael, and finally another daughter, Grace. The house that had once felt so empty was filled with the sounds of children laughing and playing. Jack expanded the ranch until it was one of the most successful in the territory. Emma's business grew as well, and she became known throughout the area for her delicious preserves and her kind heart. Together they were pillars of the Fort Bowie community, respected and admired. But more than all the external success, they had each other. Their love deepened with each passing year, weathering the inevitable challenges that life brought. There were hard times, droughts that threatened the cattle, illnesses that scared them, disagreements that had to be worked through. But they faced everything together, never forgetting the promises they had made to each other. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Jack surprised Emma with a trip back to the spot where he had picked her up that first day in Fort Bowie. The town had grown over the years, but the general store was still there, as was the restaurant where they had eaten their wedding lunch. "Do you ever regret it?" Jack asked as they stood on the boardwalk where they had first met. "Coming out here, marrying a stranger." Emma looked up at her husband, at the gray that was starting to appear at his temples, at the lines around his eyes from years of squinting into the sun. She thought about their 4 beautiful children, about the life they had built together, about the love that had grown from the seeds of a practical arrangement. "Not for a single moment," she said honestly. "You gave me everything I never knew I needed. You taught me what it means to be loved, and you let me love you in return. I would make the same choice 1,000 times over." Jack pulled her close, kissing her right there on the street, not caring who saw. "I love you, Emma Garrett. You are still my first and only love, and you will be until the day I die. And you are mine. My first love, my last love, my only love." They walked hand in hand through the town, remembering that nervous couple who had stood before Reverend Matthews a decade ago, marveling at how far they had come. That evening, they made love with the passion and tenderness of longtime partners who knew each other's bodies and hearts completely. As Emma drifted off to sleep in Jack's arms that night, she thought about the scared young woman she had been when she first arrived in Arizona territory. That Emma had been so starved for love, so desperate to belong somewhere. She had not believed she was capable of being loved or of loving in return. But Jack had shown her differently. He had been patient and kind, giving her the space to learn how to open her heart. He had loved her when she did not know how to love herself, and in doing so, he had transformed her into someone capable of giving and receiving love freely. The years continued to pass, bringing more joys and sorrows as all lives do. They celebrated weddings as their children grew and married, and they welcomed grandchildren with open arms. The ranch continued to prosper under their careful management, and they became elder statesmen of the community, the couple everyone pointed to as an example of a strong marriage. But no matter how busy life became, Jack and Emma always made time for each other. They still sat on the porch every evening, watching the sunset and talking about their days. They still held hands, still kissed tenderly, still looked at each other with the wonder of people who knew how lucky they were. One evening, many years after that first meeting, when they were both well into their 60s and their hair had gone gray, Jack and Emma sat in their usual spot on the porch. Their children and grandchildren had just left after a big Sunday dinner, and the house was quiet again. "Do you know what I was thinking about today?" Emma asked, her head resting on Jack's shoulder. "What is that, my love?" "I was thinking about that girl who stepped off the stagecoach so many years ago. How frightened she was, how certain she was that she was unlovable. I wish I could go back and tell her that everything was going to be all right, that she was going to find more happiness than she ever dreamed possible." Jack pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "That girl was brave. She took a chance on a stranger, on a new life in a harsh land. She deserves credit for that courage. We both took chances that day," Emma said. "Two lonely people hoping for something better. And we found it. We found everything." Emma lifted her head to look at her husband, seeing the young cowboy he had been in the weathered face before her. "I love you, Jack Garrett. Thank you for being my first and last love." "I love you too, Emma. Thank you for saying yes to a lonely cowboy's advertisement all those years ago. Thank you for taking a chance on me." They kissed as the sun set over the mountains, two people who had found in each other everything they never knew they needed. Their story had begun with a practical arrangement, with an advertisement in a newspaper and a desperate need for change. But it had become something far more profound. A love story that would be told by their children and grandchildren for generations to come. As darkness fell and the stars came out over the Arizona territory, Jack and Emma Garrett went inside their home, a home built on love and trust, and the courage to believe that two strangers could become soulmates. They had proved that love did not always arrive with poetry and grand gestures. Sometimes it came quietly, growing slowly over shared meals and evening conversations, over working together toward common goals and supporting each other through hardships. Their love had been worth the risk, worth the fear, worth every moment of uncertainty. Because in the end, they had found what everyone searches for: someone to truly know them and love them anyway, someone to build a life with, someone to grow old beside. Emma had once believed she had never been loved, that she never would be. But Jack Garrett had changed all that. He had been her first love and he would be her last, just as he had promised on that evening so long ago. And in loving her, he had taught her how to love herself, how to see her own worth, how to believe she deserved happiness. As they lay in bed that night, wrapped in each other's arms as they had been countless nights before, Emma thought about the journey they had taken together. From strangers to spouses to lovers to partners to best friends. They had built something beautiful from nothing more than hope and determination and a willingness to open their hearts. "What are you thinking about?" Jack murmured sleepily. "About how grateful I am. For you, for our life, for every moment we have shared. I am grateful too, every single day." They drifted off to sleep together, and Emma's last thought before sleep claimed her was that she was, at last and forever, truly loved. Jack Garrett had kept his promise. He had been her first love, and he would be her last, the great love of her life, the man who had shown her what it meant to be cherished. And somewhere in the heavens above their ranch, the stars shone brightly, as if celebrating the enduring love of two people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful together. Their story, which had begun with such uncertainty and trepidation, had become a testament to the power of love, patience, and commitment. They had proved that sometimes the best love stories are not the ones that start with lightning strikes and instant passion, but the ones that grow slowly, steadily, rooted in respect and kindness and genuine affection. The mail-order bride who had never been loved and the cowboy who promised to be her first and last had found their happily ever after, not in grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but in the quiet, steady accumulation of days spent loving and being loved, of building a life together one moment at a time. And that, Emma reflected as she fell asleep in her husband's arms, was the most beautiful love story of all.